Welcome to our daily Forex market analysis call, and this is for trading on for July 19th, 2018. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. As usual, we'll start off by taking a look at our calendar here. So today, we had an interesting day. We saw follow through. And then, so numbers here for British pound were negative. The CPI number, which is the most important number here, we talked about this, how if it was lower than this, then that would have a negative impact on the pound. But all the US dollar crosses dropped even before we got to the chart. So between Asian session and early London open there, we saw a drop in all the US dollar crosses, and then everything kind of pulled back. Now, final CPI numbers for Eurozone came in line with expectations. US data was negative. And then, of course, there was Fed Chair Powell was testifying. Coming up now, we have employment data out of Australia at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. So that will have an impact on Australian dollar. And then we also have coming up on Thursday, we have retail sales numbers, and then Philly Fed manufacturing index and unemployment claims. So not a ton of critical data for the US here, just the retail sales numbers. So that's about it for the data. So let's go on to our charts here and let's see what's going on. So in terms of our bias here, yesterday the bias was to the downside. Unfortunately, the price dropped before we could. I was hoping we'd be able to take that trade, take some good trades in the London session, but before we got to it, it already had hit our take profit target, which was at 1.1600, or kind of dropped into that while we were in the session, but it had already made its major move to the downside. So now the problem is we have a large pin to the downside here. So we have support, we are into support, we have a pin to the downside. So there's still bearishness in it. So this is where our support resistance is coming from. So there's still bearishness in this, but there is a concern now because price has given us a pin, just like this one now. It's slightly different. This was a bullish pin bar. This one's not quite a bullish pin bar. But what we could see is a push back up into the high of this candle here. And if it stays below 1660, then we are likely to see a drop. Otherwise, if it starts to break through, it can go up higher. So my bias is still to the downside, and I'm looking for a retest of this level, of the 1600 level. And if it does break through, then I would be looking for a further drop into the 1550 or 1520 area. But right now, we could get a pullback into 1660, so we have to be mindful of that. So here, looking at the 1 hour right now, it's just trading in this range here. So overall bias is still to the downside. And ideally, what I would like to see would be sort of this type of a move. Right, so that will be the type of move that I would expect, because just like this one here, so we saw a drop, pull back, drop, pull back, drop like that. And now we have seen a bigger pullback here. And then after that, I would see this. This is what I'm looking for, basically a continuation move to the downside, because we are overall making lower highs here. So I'd like to see a continuation, but we are into summer trading, which means this is the 1 hour, which means our small orders can have a larger impact than normal. So I would keep this in mind. If it breaks above this R1 level, then we have this whole entire move available for price to go to. So this is not a very efficient move. So it could go and fill this entire move up. So that's why we have to be careful. If it breaches that R1 level, then basically I would look for a move to the upside there. But bias right now is to the downside. And same thing for our pound here. The bias is to the downside. Excuse me. So the bias here is to the downside. And here we have price had dropped, went right through our target here, and it actually came all the way into this pin here. So now we are into support right here. Last time we had this pin, price had pushed up higher, so we are into this here. So just like this, see how we have a pin down here, and even though there was bearishness in it, it had pushed up higher. So that's the concern now. So this move actually is very, very similar. If you take a look here, we have a pin bar, and then we have a drop, and we have this move here. We have a pin bar, we have a large candle drop, and a follow through candle, and we have the pin on this one. So it's exactly the same. These four candles here are exactly the same as these four candles, which the concern now is that it could go up higher. So my bias is still bearish, but if it starts to go higher, it could push all the way, excuse me, it could push all the way up, just like it has done over here. So just to see this move here. So, oops, let me take out my, so just to kind of see this move here. So we had a bearish pin bar, a drop, and then as we can see, price just started going back up all the way up here. And here we have a bearish pin bar here. Price dropped, another drop. So if it stays below this level, so bias is still to the downside. I'm looking for price to basically come and test the low once again and come into the 130 level. But if it breaks above that high, but if it breaks above this level here, then the next level we are looking for is R1 and then R2, and then we're likely to see this whole move retraced. So very similar to the euro here. So I would just keep an eye on that. Bias is bearish, but with caution for pound dollar as well. Aussie dollar here. Aussie dollar actually moved up. So the daily candle close on this one is bullish. So we see a bullish pin bar here. This one also had a good follow through from yesterday. But again, like I said, price had moved already when we came to our desk. So we couldn't really take advantage of it. It hit our target. But now we have a bullish pin bar. And that suggests that price could move back up. We are in this range right here. So this range that price has been trading in, it tried to go higher, came back into the range. So here we are. Now price is pushing off of the bottom. So it could go into the high. And 74.50 or 74.40 will be the target. But if we were to bring this one back here, we are into resistance here as well. So this is the level that price had tested. And as we can see here, there are multiple times price has tested this level. There's resistance right, support right there as well. So what that means is that if it doesn't break that level, then it can continue lower. So if it does, and this is where gold turned and so did Aussie dollar. So now we do have that, the employment numbers coming out for Australia. So if employment numbers are negative, we could see this, or if it's not able to break the high here, we could see something like this and a drop. But the bias is bullish here, and if it once it goes above this level, chances are it's going to go to the higher level and then potentially even higher. So bias is actually bullish for Aussie dollar, but again, price would have to break the high for that to happen. So today I would be cautious with a lot of these. So we don't have clear-cut moves like we did yesterday. Yesterday's analysis was far better because we had a bias one way or the other. So with this one here, this is looking bullish here as well. But again, we are into resistance. So based on bullish bias, I would expect price to go up higher. And this one is sort of range bound here as well. If you take a look since this time here. So it's been in this range. But looking at more closer price action here, we are into resistance right here. So if price stays below 6,800, then it could go and test the bottom of the range once again. But if it goes above this level, which is our support resistance coming all the way from here, this was the first time price had back tested it. So we could see if it goes through it, we are likely to see a move that's something like this and all the way into the high here. So bias here would be to the upside, but again with caution, if it doesn't break the high, and then we could get something like, again, similar move to this one right here, and we could look for price to reverse. So we just have to watch and see what price does and then react to that. Dollar CAD here, this one actually is quite nice bearish pin bar, and my bias for this would be to the downside. So this is the first clear one that I can see, but if dollar CAD drops, Aussie dollar and New Zealand dollar are likely to go higher. So bias here is to the downside. Target is 1.31. 30 will be the first target, and then 1.3060 will be the second target to the downside. So dollar CAD bias is to the downside. So here, as we can see, price has dropped, and I would look for price to drop again. It could pull back. It may pull back into this pivot point here, because that's a support resistance area right from there as well. Or it could just keep on going. Bias is to the downside though. So bearish for dollar CAD. Euro pound here, Euro pound overall close is bullish to neutral here, because price went all the way up, and then now we have seen pullbacks. Because there's a large pin to the upside, I will look for price to drop. We do have this inefficient move here as well. So price has pulled back, and now we could see potentially a pullback into sort of this area here, or maybe a little bit higher into this area. So we'll have to see. But bias for this one, I would look for price to drop and fill this inefficiency for Euro pound. Euro Swiss franc, bearish close for the day here. So I would look for a further move to the downside. But if Euro starts to push up, this one could go higher as well. But the bias is bearish. First target is the bottom of the spin here, 1.1600, and then looking for 1550 level to the downside. Pound Swiss franc, this one is nice and bearish. We are into support here though, so that's something to keep in mind. If it doesn't break the support, then price could pull back, but bias is bearish and looking for a 1.2980 level. Dollar Swiss franc, this one is also bearish, so we have a bearish pin bar for the day, so I would look for price to drop, and the first target would be 99.50 level, and second target would be 99.20 level to the downside. So the nice ones, nice clear signals that I can see so far. We are looking at dollar Swiss franc is nice one. Dollar CAD, those both have pin bars. I like the pin bars. And let's take a look. Daily here, pound daily looks bearish. I would look for a test of the bottom here once again, but now we are into support, so we have to be careful. So if pound dollar starts to take off, this could go higher as well, but the bias would be to the downside, and I'm looking for 146.20 level. First target would be 146.80, then 146.20. Euro yen here, bias is to the downside based on the daily candle close, but there is a pin here. So if price doesn't break the low here, then it could go up higher to test the high once again. But if it breaks the low, then the next target is 130.30 level, which is this support and resistance level. So we have to see what this one does. So looking at the 1 hour here, so we had a nice drop. Now we are into this pullback lever. It could pull back all the way into there and then do a drop, but we'll have to wait and see. Things are not as clearly aligned. Dollar yen here, this one also has a pin bar. So this looks bearish as well, but not a very solid close. It's not a very good looking pin bar, but it is a pin bar nonetheless. So I would look for price to drop and looking for basically the bottom of this candle, 112.20 level to the downside. And if we look at the 1 hour here, this is kind of where we are. So I would look for price to drop and come into the bottom of this move. 112.20 will be the target for dollar yen. Aussie yen, this one actually had moved quite nicely to the downside, but now we have a bullish pin bar. Again, we are into resistance, so price would have to clear the resistance before it goes to the other side. So bias here is to the upside. 84.20 level will be my target for Aussie yen. CAD yen, again, we did see a big drop, or price drop all the way into support. Excuse me, but then it has closed with a bullish pin bar here. So bias is to the upside. 8,600 will be the target for CAD yen, or I should say 8,600 is the first target. If it keeps on pushing higher, 8,650. So bias is to the upside. This one, New Zealand dollar, also a bullish pin bar here. So looking for price to move up higher. Target here would be 77.00 for New Zealand yen. This one is quite nice here as well. It is into support. So price has been in this bit of a range here. It does have a bearish bias. So in this one, we could look for a pullback into 1.5750 level and then a drop from there. Excuse me. So bias is bearish and looking for price to go into next level here, 1.5650. So Euro Aussie is also looking bearish here. Now there is news coming out for Aussie, yeah. So we have to be careful with that one. Pound Aussie, this was a great drop based on the bearish candle close yesterday, did a pullback and a drop. So now bias is to the downside, and we could see a pullback either into 1.7700 or 1.7720, but the bias is to the downside and looking for price to drop further into 1.7600. So Pound Aussie is also looking bearish, but again, there is news coming out at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Okay, Pound New Zealand here. Pound New Zealand, big, huge drop. That was a big double top here, big drop, and still looking bearish. Looking for price to drop into a 1.9150 level. And in terms of pullback, we could probably see we could get a pullback into 1.9290 level, or right into 1.9265 level. This one right here, that's a good support resistance area as well. Price had reacted here. So Pound New Zealand is also looking bearish. Euro New Zealand here, big drop in this one as well, and biases to the downside. Next target here is a 1.7065 level. So Euro New Zealand is biased to the downside. Euro CAD, so commodities have been very, very strong today. That's a big, this would have been a very good short, and I did not take it, unfortunately, but that was a great level. So we have a nice bearish candle close here, biases to the downside, and next target is a 1.5280 level, and the one below that is 1.5250. So Euro CAD is also looking quite bearish. And in terms of pullback here, so if you could maybe get a pullback into 1.5345 level, but the 1 hour, yeah, so there's our, that would be a good pullback. Not sure if we would get that right into the pivot point. That's a nice, strong support and resistance area. If we do get that into 1.5355 level, that would be an excellent place to look for a short. Pound CAD, nice drop here, nice follow through from yesterday. So overall, overnight, the moves were really good and they hit all the levels. Well, this didn't quite hit the target, but kind of really moved nicely towards our target. Biases to the downside. Next target, 1.7160 level, and then 1.7060 level or 70 level to the downside, back into the support and resistance area right here. And in terms of pullback, we could probably look at pullback into 1.7265. So pound CAD is another one. So 1.7265 would be the pullback level. And that covers that. So let's take a look at gold here. So gold here, we have doji here, which suggests that there were buyers sitting here. But this one still, it looks a little bearish, but what it could do, so this one we have to be cautious with. What could happen with this one is one of these. So I was actually telling my husband that it was going to drop. He and I were talking about it. He wanted to go long in it. And I was telling him that it's likely to drop further because he was looking at, I don't know, some other level. But we talked about, I remember very specifically, I was talking about 112.20 level. So it could come and test this level once again. But this is an important support and resistance level right here. So for it to continue lower, we would have to see a drop through the support here. So ideally, excuse me, what we are looking for here would be something like this one right here, drops through, pulls back, and does a further move to the downside. Now, so this one and Aussie dollar are related, so I would keep an eye on both. But this one here, I would be cautious of this 12.20 level, because if it doesn't break through this level, it could very well go up and retest this level, and it could go and essentially it could give us, like, it could do one of these little moves to the downside, go all the way up and do that. So ideally, this would be the best level to sell from. But again, it could just as easily go down as well. So I would be cautious with this one. Based on the doji there, that shows rejection of the level, which means that would be bullish from the daily perspective. Oil here, oil, big move for the day. And that's one of the reasons dollar CAD has been up as well. So oil is looking bullish, looking at 68.80 level or 68.84 level, back into the next support and resistance area. So bullish bias for oil, which supports our bearish bias for dollar CAD. All right, any questions? That's all I have. Oh, Bitcoin, yeah. Let's take a peek. Bitcoin actually has a bearish, it has a pin bar here, so that looks bearish. So I would look for a retest of 69.06 level, the high of this. Yeah, so this big move to the upside, it could come and retest this and then basically go higher. That's quite a jump there. The moves are quite thin. So bias here, basically, I would look for price to drop and then go up, but there is pin bar here, so that's why it could drop. Okay, so bearish, I would say for now, looking for a retest of the top of the range. All right, so that's everything. So we will call it a wrap. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you at 5 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. Bye for now.